Good day. Welcome to another lesson on our Super Dealmaker program. Today we're looking at Access to Market Skills program. And under Access to Market, we're looking at the module Bootstrapping. Now, under this program, Access to Funding, we started by looking at, doing the introduction in terms of the access to markets, the landscape, the things that you need to look out for, and the process. And we looked at the landscape, the funding landscape in South Africa, the institution that you can use for different funding, and how you can fund your business, and the things that you need to make sure that you put together in terms of compliance, how the due diligence is conducted, and all that. So today we're looking at the topic bootstrapping. So what is bootstrapping and why is it important for entrepreneurs to understand this topic? Okay, bootstrapping is where entrepreneurs starting businesses using their own funds. Okay, so because normally you find they say in most entrepreneurs they say they're not starting businesses because they can't access funding, which is true given the South African landscape of funding SMEs. So the funding environment or the financial system of South Africa is not conducive to funding SMEs specifically. So for you to access commercial funding or bank loan, you need to be able to prove one, business sustainability, and then two, you need to prove that you have security to cover the loan that they're giving you. That's more on the banking side. And on the DFIs, which are developmental funding institutions, you need to prove viability. So they hardly, sometimes they do fund call it startup where they don't have proven market. Like we have institutions like your NYDA, which gives let's say grants to youth to help them start businesses. Like they put them through different programs where initially they give you 50,000 and then they'll give you later on, once you proven certain things, then they give you 100,000. That's now their current structure, the funding structure, but that might change. So I'm not saying that in South Africa there is no funds there are no funding institutions that do startups. But as I continuously say in this session, yes, when they are out there doing marketing, they'll tell you that they do startups. But I can tell you that majority, they don't do startups. Unless if you're a startup and you have a secured contract, or you have been appointed, or we have a service level agreement where you have secured the market, then as a startup, it's easier for you to get funding. So purchase, or if you receive a purchase order, there are a lot of platforms. Most of our call it the fintech that exists in South Africa, they are designed to fund purchase orders or to fund contracts. But if you're a startup, you don't have a contract, or you don't have a purchase order from government or from big institutions, our funding landscape now becomes a dangerous place to go. You shouldn't even, or you can consider it, but it will not yield benefits for you to continuously pursue that. It will end up discouraging you. So now that's where bootstrapping comes in for startups, for new entrepreneurs. That's why it's important, and to find the best way or best strategies to fund your own business. That's why we developed this module, so that you can guide new, especially startups or small or micro businesses, to say, how do you use your own funds to grow your business instead of relying on an external funding. So we're going to go through in terms of the details and the techniques, but I've just given the background and the rationale why bootstrapping is important for entrepreneurs, and it is critical that you understand how you can bootstrap your business so that you can go into the market or go raise funding instead of raising a startup funding, you raise expansionary funding, which is received a little bit better in our South African market in terms of the funding. So instead of going to a funding institution to say, I'm looking for a startup capital and I need to start whatever training institution in Polokwane, for argument's sake, you should be going to a funding institution telling them, I've started a training institution, we've done this and this is where we are. So we have these objectives that we want to achieve, but to get there, we need funding. We funded the business until this point, but because of the demand or because of the market requirements, we need expansionary capital. So there you will get an ear from, most especially the developmental institution. And the banks will give you an ear if you say, I have contracts, I've been performing well for a period of time, and here's the security. Then they'll be comfortable to give you funding. Other than that, you will be frustrated and you can spend a lot of time trying to secure funding or to access funding instead of focusing on to finding ways you can bootstrap your business. Because remember, you might not see it as a serious exercise to trying to access funding, but it is a very involved process because there are a lot of documents that are required. They do, obviously, then before you need to complete the application form, you need to submit supporting documents and all that. And to source those supporting documents is time consuming. And most entrepreneurs, they use consultants to help them raise funding, and you need to have money to pay the consultant. And good consultants, they charge good price. So you need to have sufficient money for you to pay the consultant to help you put together an application form to submit to a funding institution. But if now you go through this course, we are trying to capacitate you to be able to put together a funding proposal and to be able to complete an application and submit for funding and make sure that your business is ready to access that funding. But today, the lesson today is not how to access the commercial funding. We're looking at bootstrapping. How can you fund your own business? How can you use your own resources to start and expand your business to a point where it will be easier for third parties to fund you? But let's start with, as I explained, that bootstrapping is entrepreneurs using their own funds to start businesses. And maybe the issue is, where do I get my own funds to start a business? Where do you get your own funds? But first, before we get into where and how, let's just look at what are the advantages or the positives that you can take from you starting your own business. Okay. One, starting your own business, obviously it takes long for any business to start operating and being profitable, right? So if you get external funding upfront, you'll start being under pressure to start performing. And most of the challenges could be out of your control, like maybe getting legislative approval, getting certain things in place so that you can operate. For example, if you're starting a training organization or a training institution, you need to have, if you're providing accredited training, you need to get accreditation, right? So then for you can go out and go look for funding so that they can fund you to get accreditation, which now accreditation sometimes takes long. Then you get funding. This is a commercial funding, or you use loans, whatever. Then it takes you long. Averagely, it will take you, at least if you are doing well, it will take you minimum 6 months to get an accreditation from SETA. Okay, so in that 6 months, you wouldn't be generating any income. And the loan that you have taken for you to get accreditation might kick in. And then it kick in, and then remember as well, once you get the accreditation, you're not necessarily going to get business. You're still have now. I have the accreditation. Now maybe you prepare your marketing and all those things, and you start pitching your business to different institutions and to learners, and you start marketing yourself. And in the process, maybe you take another 6 months to get traction in the market. Then maybe start generating your revenue a year later. So if you funded that out of debt, then you will be under pressure to perform. It will be under stress to perform. But if you are using your own funding, you can push the project to a point that you have the necessary accreditations. And then once you get the accreditations, then once you start approaching the market, when you see you have demand for your trainings, then you approach funding institution to fund your project. Because one, you'll be able to prove that you have the necessary approvals for the sector that you are operating in. And then two, you have market traction, or you have interest from the market. So it makes it easier for commercial institutions to fund you. Now, that being said, it makes it easier, but as well, the stress that this thing that you owe people and you're not generating income, it can cause a lot of stress for you as an entrepreneur. So using bootstrapping, yes, you might not have enough money to maybe do 10 accreditation. You can start with 1, right? And then you will build on that as you go along. But you start the process so that even if whenever you approach a funding institution, they must see that you have done something. You have, they call it putting skin in the game. You've made effort, you used your own funds that you don't necessarily have to start the business, to take it to a certain point. So whoever that's coming on board later will have confidence in you as an entrepreneur to say you are a self-starter, because entrepreneurs are self-starters. You need to find a way to start without external support, because that's one of the characteristic of an entrepreneur, or something that in your profile as an entrepreneur you should have. You must be a self-starter and be innovative in how you do things. So to bootstrap, one, it elevates your entrepreneurship profile. Two, it reduces the stress of having a debt that you need to repay before you even generate your first income. And another advantage is that sometimes when you go to external funders, they might want shareholding in your business. So by taking shareholding earlier, remember now you don't have revenue to show for your valuation. So obviously funding institutions and angel investors and all that, they are in business to make money. So if you have a good business concept and you want the funding institution to fund you from the beginning before you prove the concept, then you might have to give them a big chunk of your shareholding, and you're going to give them cheaper, because remember your concept now is not proven. But if you use your own funds in a way that you can to prove the concept, so that when you're approaching the commercial funders or even the angel investors, which is a topic that you're going to go in later in the next module, if you approach the commercial funders or the angel investors with a business that is operational and you have proven the market, or you've proven certain things, then that business will have a higher value than a business that is a pure startup. So bootstrapping helps you to make sure that when the funders are coming in, and if they're going to take equity in your business, then they'll take equity at a higher price. Because if you just start up, you have to sell them at a massive discount. So you might lose value in your business by selling it early to early investors in your business. So the third benefit is that you will be able to retain control of your business if you bootstrap your business. And the fourth one, actually, once you have investors or funders in your business, they tend to dictate certain things. There are certain conditions that they put too many conditions in your business. But if you are bootstrapping your business, you are funding your business on your own, you are able to iterate or pivot, meaning you are able to change your business model as you see it fit. As you test in the market, you are able to change your business model or your approach to market, or to even to change your business completely, because you don't have a pressure or you don't have a big brother that you need to report to. So it gives you that freedom to iterate or to pivot your business, meaning to change your business to suit the market. Because if you get funded, they put certain conditions, terms and conditions apply. So you find that they put terms and conditions, you are funding you because you are a training institution. But as you test in the market, you realize that the market doesn't need a training institution, they need maybe enterprise development institution. So if you don't have funders that have funded you based on you being a training institution, it will be easier for you to pivot towards being an enterprise development institution. I hope that makes sense. So bootstrapping your business gives you a little bit of security in terms of the changing of the business model, testing different markets and all that. So you rather have this freedom initially. Yes, you might not have funds to fully fund your operations. We're going to go into that to say, how do you source the funds now? But these are the advantages that you might consider if you want to bootstrap your business. One, it causes less stress because it's your own money. You are able to push at your own pace, so you won't have a lot of stress from external funders. And two, it gives you that freedom to be flexible in your approach. Three, it gives you that good profile or good CV to say, I've started this business without funding and I pushed it to this level. So people out there, the market out there, it might not be a funding market, but it might be maybe you try to access a market and you say, no, I don't have funding in my business. I've started it from scratch without anyone funding me. So you will easily attract support from third parties, even if it's not for funding. And fourth, if you're going for funding, if you bootstrap your business, then you build confidence in the business because you would have proven certain things. You would have done your feasibility study, you have tested the market and tested the operations. So by the time you go for funding, it will be a little bit clearer in what you will be able to do. You will be able to answer the questions that the funding institutions are looking for when they are doing what they call the due diligence, meaning when they are doing the investigation to see if the risk is worth taking for them. Is it worth it for them to invest in business? So if you bootstrap your business, there are certain things that you would have proven in the process. And then it will make it easier for you to access the commercial funding. So these are the 4 advantages of bootstrapping that it is good that as an entrepreneur, you make sure that you do first before you go out to seek markets, seek funding and do other things. Make sure that you need to bootstrap your business. Now let's go into the stages of bootstrapping, right? So we have the initial stage, right? Or even any funding institution, sometimes you have your initial stage. You always have the initial stage and then you get your growth stage and then you have the maintenance stage. So at the initial stage of bootstrapping, generally the costs that are involved is your setup cost, right? So you find that one, you need to register your business. You need to make sure that it's on CSD. You have the CSD, you have the tax clearance, you have the BE certificate, you have the bank account, you have the permit, you've identified a place where you're going to operate from, you have registered all the necessary permits and licenses that you need for you to operate. That is called the initial stage. Then that is not much. I mean, to fund that, I don't know, in terms of depending on the type of business, but registering your business, you can do it on your own, getting the B certificate, getting the tax clearance, maybe opening the bank account. I know there are certain institutions that allows you, if you are banking with them, they allow you to open call it dummy business account. They don't charge you anything. They only start charging you once you start operating. So all this to set up, to register for your business, it might cost you less than 500 rands, given the funds that you need to pay to your CIPC and all that. That's the initial phase to establish an entity that you're going to operate from, or you're going to use as the company or the organization that you're going to operate. So after getting the necessary legislative registration, then you get into, depending on the industry that you are in. If you are in training, you might have to get accreditation if you're providing accredited training. If you are in retail, you're opening a spaza shop, you might need a trading license. If you are mining, you need a mining license. And then if you are putting up a service station, you need a retail license, meaning you need to apply for a retail license at Department of Energy. Okay, they change the name a lot, but I think now it's called the Department of Energy. So there are certain licenses that you need, or the documents that you need to or the permission or the certificates that you need to make sure that you secure before you start operating, depending on the sector that you are in. And then if you are building, you call it the CIBD. You need to get a CIBD, and then they go with the levels. So to get CIBD, you need to have proven certain things. So those are the costs that, as an entrepreneur, you're gonna incur. So those we can apply. Maybe there's an institution like you find like there are provincial developmental institutions that help institutions to register their business and to get all this. I know in Limpopo you have the leader, and then you have GPF in Gauteng. So you have KwaZulu-Natal growth, what. So you have those regional TFIs that they can even assist you to get the funding. So you can basically do the initial stage for free, or apply using the local or the provincial enterprise development, government-owned enterprise development, depending on where you are. Obviously, if you are going the route of using your provincial developmental institutions, then the process might take you longer. Or you can do it yourself. That as well might take you a little bit longer because you don't know the processes. You'll be learning the processes and the nitty-gritties of doing certain things. Or you can appoint maybe a business consultant to get these things done, depending on your pocket now, and depending on the time frames that you're operating with. So if you are not in a hurry, you can use maybe the provincial government developmental institutions. They can do it for free, but obviously we know getting service from government institutions it's a very long process, and it's a taxing. You need to invest a lot of time, and you need to be patient and all that. But if you are in a hurry and you have the funds, the money, I don't know, it shouldn't cost you more than 3,000 to get the whole thing going. Currently, this year, like 2022. So if you have 5,000 rand, you can register your business, you can get your tax clearance, get your bank account, get your BE certificate, get your CIBD, or whatever that you might need, or operating license, because they don't cost much. And then, or you can do them yourself, do your self-application and all that. Generally, I recommend you to do it by yourself, because what it does, it teaches you certain things in terms of registering. Yes, you're not going to be going into a business of registering businesses and doing the tax clearances, but going through that process yourself, there are certain learnings that you're going to go through. You might need. It makes you understand why certain things are required. Even going forward, it will come handy, or it will be of value to you to understand why you did certain things and what did they need, so that if it comes a point where you need to do the renewals, you don't have to rely on consultant to do things for you. You will have the knowledge. Even if you appoint a consultant, if you have a basic knowledge, then it makes a difference. You know what you expect from your consultant and the timelines and all that, so that your consultant might not take you for a ride. So my view is you need to try and do it yourself to a certain point where maybe you can't, or you're getting frustrated. Then you can get a consultant. But even that consultant, you appoint them for a specific thing to say, I'm having 1, 2, 3, 4 challenges. Can you resolve them for me? Rather than to say, I want to register a company, I need what. Then they'll take you for a ride. And then even the fees that you're going to be paying are a little bit higher. And you're denying yourself the learnings that you're going to need in future in terms of legislative requirements, what you need to register for, and the basic experience of managing your business. Because sometimes tax clearances and all those things, applying for tax numbers and all those things, they give you an exposure on how SARS work. If you're doing your UIF and all that, it gives you an exposure on how your Department of Labor works. For reserving your own names and all that, it gives you an understanding of how CIPC work, which it's a general knowledge that you need to obtain. It's like you're doing your own Master of Business Administration there, because you will be understanding certain things that your business need. So you do those things. You have, as I said, you have options on how you're going to approach the initial bootstrapping. Do you do it yourself? Do you use a consultant, or do you use the TFIs that provide such services? Okay. Now, that's the simpler and the cheapest part of setting up, right? Then the next one, it depends on the sector that you are in. Let's say you want to go into hospital. Then it means you need a license. Or yes, okay, they don't call it a license, but it's permission of some kind. It becomes a license after the hospital is in existence. So then it gets converted into a license. So now, to get that approval to set up a hospital from Department of Health, you need to do your feasibility study. You need to do, and in that feasibility study, obviously, you need to know where you're going to set it up, and then understand the type of business that you want to set up, the technical, and then do your EIA, make sure that the things are compliant, and then you do your building plans and all those things, so that when you submit your application to Department of Health, it's complete. And for you to get feasibility study, it costs money. You can do your own feasibility study. I mean, if you have the necessary skills to do it, you don't necessarily have to pay, but it's always better to pay someone who has done it before, more especially for that specific project. Let's say if it's a hospital, then you know that you need the necessary approval. Even if it's a mall, you still need the necessary approval. You still have to do feasibility study. You still have to do EIA in terms of environmental impact assessment. You still have to make sure that you develop your building plans and all those things. So that to prove that the mall is viable, you need tenants, right? You need to have anchor tenants. And to get anchor tenants, you need the necessary approvals, and they must be able to see 3D stuff to say how the mall is going to look like and all that. So now, those initial costs, this now is deep. You need to have deep pockets for you to execute that. And on the other side, it will be difficult for anyone. Okay, there could be grants and other funding institutions that they can help you do the feasibility study. Like your CEDA, your NYDA, they can fund feasibility studies. So if you don't have the funding, then you can get the grants to do the feasibility study. But I'll go a little bit more in detail on the grants when we're doing incentives and grants module. So now you need to fund those things, right? You need to find It's either you fund it yourself or you bring in partners. That's when now you start, because there are certain things that you can start on your own, but there are certain projects that needs co-founders. They call them co-founders. So if you want to bootstrap your business to a certain level, obviously you need to look at your capacity. Okay, can you fund this project? Do you have the necessary skills? Do you have the resources to fund this? Do you have the network to make it happen? If you don't have all this, sometimes you get a technical partner who knows the operation. Let's say you are doing hospital. You might need a builder or somebody who develop properties. You might need an operator, somebody who knows how to operate a hospital. You might need the doctors, because remember the hospital, how it works, you need to have doctors that refer patients to your business, right? So those are the key people. So you need to make sure that you have the necessary skills, or you have the necessary founders that you can work with. Meaning, it won't just be you. It will be you. Maybe you enter into a shareholders agreement with the potential shareholders. Let's say you bring people who are bringing value to your business, right? And then even if you're setting up a mall, you might need a property developer as a shareholder. You might need an operator as a shareholder, or somebody who's got experience in that, because the school fees is just high to pay for the mistake that you can make in such a big project. So you need the necessary skills, and then you need potential lease or the potential tenants for the mall that will come on board. Some they might want shareholding, some they might just be willing to partner because we're giving them space. So the second stage is a little bit costly because of the costs that are involved, the cost that you will incur for you to set up. You are still on the initial stage. You're not yet operating. So you need to fund those things. So the easy way to fund it, to bootstrap it, is to make sure that you bring in the relevant partners. People with money, people with the technical know-how, and then people with access to market. Because those are the three main things that are required. So if you don't have these three things, look around the people that you can bring on board who can complement the skills that you have, right? Then that's how you bootstrap now the second stage, where you're still using your own funds, but you're bringing, depending on the size of the project. I mean, if you are setting up the spaza shop and you have a garage, you just need few shelves and off you go. You don't even maybe need shelves initially. You can put them on the floor, and then maybe have a fridge there if for stuff that needs a fridge, and then you go. And then the profits that you generate from you selling, you use that profit to buy other things. So the spaza shop, a retail business, it's easier. Or maybe you are setting up a tendering business. You don't need much, but you just need to register, make sure that you have your CSD, your CIBD, your BE certificate, which you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can easily fund. So now, the second stage of big businesses that you can't start without major investment. So this is now how you bootstrap those. Those you need a relevant part. You might have money, but you might not have the technical know-how. And because you're not operating, for you to go employ a person with the technical know-how, it's going to cost you. And developing, let's say, a mine, or developing a mall or service station or a hospital, it takes long. Taking maybe a project for a year or so. If you are call it stingy with your shares and you want to hire people, it might cost you more. But if you bring in co-founders who bring different skills, then it makes it cheaper to set up rather than relying on external funding. But actually at that level, it's not even easy to get external funding because there are certain things that you need to prove. You need to prove the zoning. You need to prove you have done EIA. You need to prove that you have building plans so that they know how much it's going to cost. You need to prove that you have, let's say, tenants. If it's a mall or if it's a hospital, you need to prove that you have a licensed building, you have a EIA, you have the doctors, referring doctors. So different business, if it's a mining project, you need to make sure that you have the licenses, you have the communities involved, you're invested in environmental stuff. You think like it takes millions of rands to set up such institution. And if maybe it's a service station, you need to get a retail license. To get a retail license, you need to do a EIA. First, you need to do EIA so that the Department of Environmental and what it approves the site, right? And then once it approves the site and doing EIA, I mean the cheapest probably you'll get is 80 grand. A good EIA consultant, we're taking 80 grand, and then for you to convince them, it's just to apply for their license, and that process takes long. If you don't appoint a consultant that knows how to deal with the Department of Energy, it might take you forever for you to get that license. So sometimes you need to appoint people who know how to get you the license. And then after getting an EIA, obviously to attract an oil company to come invest, like your engine, whatever, Caltex, whoever, Sasol, you need to have done the feasibility study. Meaning, what is the feasibility study? If you want to understand the feasibility study in detail, you need to go watch or read the material from our business plan development. We're going into feasibility study in detail there so that you can understand what is meant by feasibility study. But basically, what is a feasibility study is you study the market, you study the traffic, you study the number of customers, and you check if, given the number of customers or cars that pass there, or patients, or what do you call it, minerals that you can get, depending on what you're doing, will that make you money? That's the feasibility study. And then you look at the financial part, technical part, operational part. You look at the market part of it. Is it operationally, is it feasible? Financially, is it feasible? Market-wise, is it feasible? And then compliance-wise, is it feasible? That's the feasibility study. So you need to do the feasibility study. So if you don't have 80, let's say you don't have 80,000 to do EIA, then the feasibility study, a good one, we're talking maybe 40, 50 grand. So now those are the initial cost. You are not operating. You are not getting a cent yet. That's the money that you need to sink before anything happens. Hence, I'm saying now, what do you do if you want to bootstrap such operation? Then you need to bring in partners who, one, maybe have financial resources if you don't have. So when you bring in the partners, you bring the partners that will complement your business, right? They bring in the skills or the resources that you don't have. You might bring in a developer that will develop the property for shares rather than you paying them. You might have to bring in an operator who will be operating the business. You might be bringing a financial investor who will be bringing the financial component. So you can bootstrap even a big project, but sometimes you can't do it on your own. You need to bring in partners. And this now, it makes it a corporate rather than just an SME, because you need to have the shareholders agreement. You need to have the corporate governance in place. If you don't know what is corporate governance, we have a module on corporate governance. You need to bring in the corporate governance. You need to bring in the management controls. You need to bring in a lot of controls in place so that you are able to manage that relationship. Because without managing that relationship, then it will end up the project failing. You'll end up like being the many failing cooperatives that we see out there. This is one of the things that makes cooperatives, because cooperatives are businesses that you should be 5 or more people with common interest. But with the cooperative, the challenge is it's a democratic institution, rather than if it's a company and you are bringing shareholders. Then you enter into a shareholders agreement, meaning you agree on the terms of your relationship. Because sometimes you might be friends, but believe me, in business, you'll have differences in opinion, in vision, in direction. So you need to have a shareholders agreement to govern that relationship, so that when you are in dispute or you have a dispute, you need to know how to resolve it. Then you resolve it through the shareholders agreement. It will tell you how you vote, how the decisions are made. But with the cooperative, then the cooperative is more democratic. Everyone votes, and so that's why you're having a lot of challenges with the cooperative. So if you are bootstrapping a business, yes, you must bring, like the cooperatives do, you bring people with common interest. But maybe rather than do it as a cooperative, you do it as a business, right? As a company, so that you have a strict shareholders agreement versus if you have a cooperative constitution, because that is democratic, and we know sometimes democracy doesn't work in business. You need to have certain documents that certain decisions can be made in a certain way. So that's how you bootstrap a bigger project, the initial stage, where you need serious capital. You find relevant partners, you enter into agreement, and those partners must be complementing your weaknesses, if I can call it that, the things that you don't have. They must be bringing something on board. And that, it will help you to deal with the second initial phase of getting proper licenses. If it's accreditations for training, then you need to get people who can do your QMS and all those things. Then bring people on board. You don't have to close everyone and make sure that you want to own everything. This is yours. No, it might not see the light of day if you're trying to hog to that business idea to say, no, it's mine. I'm not bringing in shareholders. So you can't do big projects that needs serious funding at an initial stage without bringing other people on board. Yes, you might have, maybe you might be lucky. You have the technical know-how. You have the funding muscle. You have the experience in developing such businesses like service station. You have building experience, or if it's a hospital or if it's a mining, you know how to sink shafts and all those things. So you might be lucky to have those expertise. But if you don't have those expertise, you might have secured the land, but you might not be able to take it to the next stage if you are not bringing other people, if you don't bring in co-founders in the business. But those co-founders, it doesn't matter if you are friends, it must be governed by a shareholders agreement, because you are bound to have differences. Unless somebody is not thinking, but they might start thinking at some point later down the road. So you will be in trouble when they start thinking. So you must make sure that you have the shareholders agreement, and if they get bright ideas down the line, you have a document that it governs your relationship. So that's how you fund the initial stage. For smaller businesses, a retail shop, tendering businesses, if you want to sell stuff, that is easy, because you don't need massive initial capital. You just need to register your business, as I explained earlier. Make sure that you have compliance document. If you are selling, you might even find the suppliers and negotiate the agreement in terms of how you're gonna sell their products. You might even take if you are building a retail business, you might even maybe take the pick and pay model, where products in the shop, I don't know if they still apply, if they still apply that model. The product in the shop, they are on consignment, meaning the supplier still carries the risk until that the products are sold. So Pick and Pay, what it does, I don't know if it's still doing it, but I know what it used to do, is if you want to supply them, you bring the product, you put them in the shop. They don't pay you up front. They pay you, I think, after 90 days, because that's an average stock test, average stock turnover. So meaning The stock, they don't pay you, so they are not spending money on the stock, but they bring in the stock. You bring in the stock if you are the supplier. You put it on the shelf, right? Or they put it for you, depending on how big you are. Then after they sell it, then they pay you. So they're not spending money on stock. So that's how that model works for bootstrapping, because you can get the suppliers to give you products, you sell them, and you only pay them after you sold the product. That's how you bootstrap your business, and that's how Pick n Pay made sure that they grew their business, because they were not spending money on stock. They just provided infrastructure, and then once they give you the infrastructure, then the suppliers bring their product and then they sell them, and after that they pay the suppliers without spending money. All they did is just to provide the infrastructure. So there are creative ways for you to set up your the initial stage of the business without resorting to commercial funding or grants or whatever. But you need to be creative about it. Find the best way to do it without going out and looking for loans that will be sitting on your neck before you even start operating. Okay, next we'll go into how you get your customers to fund or the market to fund your business. And the next stage, not the next stage, but the other method of you bootstrapping your business will be where you get funded by your customers, right? So in certain industries, you are able to get the customers to pay your deposit, and then you work to a certain level and they pay you, and then you work to finish off whatever, depending on the number of stages. So you can approach your business in that way to say, for me to supply you with this book, I'll need a deposit of 50% of the price, whatever it is, before I even start. Okay, so it means the customers are funding depending on your profit margin, right? Then once you get the deposit from the customer, let's say even this book, you are not producing it, you are buying it from somewhere. You also negotiate with your suppliers to say, I'll pay you 30%, and then I'll pay you the final product on delivery, for argument's sake. So then you take the deposit that you got from your customer, then you pay the supplier the deposit. The supplier supplies you supply it to the customer pays you, then you pay the final payment to your supplier. Or even if you pay the deposit and they deliver, use the deposit from your customer, then the 50% it can be funded from your own pocket before the customer pays. It depends, but you know that the customer already funded the half of your operating or your cost. So that means for you to operate, you don't need external funding. You use your customers to fund you, which is it works well in many sectors. Or if you are let's say you are a retailer, you pay first, then on payment, you pay the deposit, and on delivery, you pay the full amount. Meaning, as a business, you will have that deposit to use that deposit to go buy whatever you need for you to complete the project. So that's how you can also bootstrap your business using the customers, where you make customers pay a deposit or full amount, if that may be. I know, like in the broiler or the chicken industry, for small farmers to get the broiler chickens or the one-day chick, whatever they call them, they generally pay the hatchery upfront. You pay and you wait for them to prepare your chickens and whatever, and they deliver the chickens after a certain period. So you're basically now, if you are a hatchery in this case, your customers are funding you because they pay you full price and you don't deliver until maybe after 2 weeks or whatever. So you can use that money to execute on whatever the project that you're using, and then you deliver to customer. That's the second method of bootstrapping your business, which is straightforward. Find a way, if you don't have the funds, find a way for you to get your customer to fund your business. That's how you can also bootstrap your business. This one, okay, I won't go in much detail, but that's how it is. You find a way, you prepare a value proposition to convince your customers to pay you before you deliver, so that you can use that money to go secure whatever the material or the labor, whatever that you are supplying. But the customer would have funded you. Instead of you trying to go to get funding from commercial institution, you can find and structure your business in a way that your customers are the ones who are funding you. Okay. And then the last one is the credit. So what happens is, but remember, this can work in combination, right? It doesn't mean if your customers can fund you, you cannot get credit from your suppliers. So credit, how it works is, if you're a business and another business allows you to buy on credit, so that business, it means that business is funding your business. Or let me as well, just keep in mind, as a business or as a small business, if you sell your goods on credit, right, or your services, your product on credit, it means whoever you are selling on credit to, you are funding that business. Meaning, you could have received that money if it was on cash on delivery, whatever. Then you can use it for other things, right? But now, you gave this guy on credit, you don't have the money to use it. So basically, you funded that business. And similarly, you can use your credit terms to fund your business. You go out, you negotiate with your suppliers. Let's say you are a retailer. You negotiate, you open an account with whoever. You say, let's say it's a 30-day account. Then you buy the stuff on account, you go sell them. Once you sold them, you take the money, you keep your profit, and you pay the supplier. So basically, the supplier will be funding your business. So that's how you bootstrap your business. One, you can do it on your own. Or two, you can bring in the shareholders to help you grow the business. Three, you can use your customers, like take deposits and use the deposit to buy the stuff. You can use your customers. And lastly, you can use your creditors. You open an account, they give you stuff on credit, you sell it. Once you sold it, then you take the money, you pay back the supplier, and you keep the profit. So, and then that's the four main approaches that you can use to bootstrap your business. And the other one is, when you bring the shareholders, sometimes you can just bring equity investors as well. You can use your family members, your friends, and all that. You can use those to help you bootstrap your business without going to the external funding. So the co-founders, they could be your family, it could be your friends, it could be people that you know in the industry with the expertise. You bring them as a shareholder, and then you build a business to a certain level. And you know, once you reach that level, then you will be able to go out and source the external funding. That is our lesson on bootstrapping. I hope it makes sense. And somehow, as an entrepreneur, you need to, or you have to bootstrap your business to a certain level before you go out and seek external funding. Okay, thank you.